Welcome, mere mortal lights, to another episode of Mere Mortals Musings. You have Kyron here on this side.
You got Juan on the other side.
And we are back in Juan's fancy new podcast room. Brilliant floor. Doesn't look dirty at all.
Doesn't look as dirty, maybe in pictures.
What do you call it? Herringbone?
It's herringbone pattern. It's tiled. It's bricks, red bricks. But if you actually could see them, folks, they're quite thin bricks. They're actually maybe 1.5 centimeters thick rather than being like a full brick. But they're laid down in a herringbone pattern. And it took very long to put them down on this particular room.
Well, we appreciate it because we're here today. We've got some panels up as well, so hopefully it's not too echoey. Mere Mortals Musings is an episode where we pick a topic, then we dive deeper into it, try and drag out some practical philosophy, some effective philosophy indeed. So this is takeaways, learnings from our everyday lives, from perhaps the things we're reading, books, all these sorts of things. I chose today's episode, and it was originally spawned from this book here, A Room with a View.
With a View.
By E. M. Forster. I don't know why he doesn't use his first name. It's Edward. And there was quite a few extra things I wanted to talk about in the book review, but I just went like, this will take too long. So I'll save it and do it in a musings episode. And in particular, there was some stuff related to morals in there, and I was looking this up, and I was like, oh, okay, morals, so they're similar to ethics. What if you had to guess, what's the difference between morals and ethics?
That's actually a good question. I'm not too sure because in the very, very little prep that I did for this particular podcast, that came up as a question in my own mind.
Okay. Well, essentially, ethics is typically a bit more honed in and defined, and it will usually be have some philosophical backings behind it, perhaps. So if someone's debating ethics, they're usually debating it in a philosophical style, whereas morals are more broad, available for the general public, I think. If what's the moral of the story? You ask that instead of like what's the ethic of the story.
Would you say morals more practical, ethics more philosophical?
Yeah, a little bit like that, yeah. Okay. Which also begs the thumbnail question, which I had, practical morals. Are they possible? Morals. So we might get onto that. Can you have practical morals?
Okay.
I did want to start with a definition because it informs a lot of my other notes. And once again, Wikipedia, the god, has the best definitions for sure. And so I looked up two. So there was morality and morals, and they're slightly different. So the differentiation of intentions, decisions, and actions between those that are distinguished as proper, aka right, and those that are improper, aka wrong.
Is that morality?
So that's morality. Yep. That's part of it. And then it also says morality can be a body of standards or principles derived from a code of conduct from a particular philosophy, religion, or culture, or it can derive from a standard that a person believes should be universal. So the two different things I kind of noticed there was the first one was really talking about almost consensus of, the differentiation, something that is distinguished, right and wrong. This is definitely all requiring humans to make an active decision and be like, we agree that this is right, or we agree that this is wrong. You can we'll perhaps get into morals for the individual a little bit later. So one part of this that I want to talk about was consensus. And then the other part was, where does it derive from? The code of conduct? Is it philosophy, religion, culture? And then it was also like kind of passing them on. So the last thing that a moral can be is a message that is conveyed or a lesson to be learned from a story or event. The moral may be left to the hearer, reader, or viewer to determine for themselves, or one's going to love this, or may be explicitly encapsulated in a maxim. And I was also looking at what maxims are, and they're another word for those are aphorisms, which is
aphorisms.
Yeah, it's just another little distinguishing thing. So the three topics that I really had were related to consensus. How do you agree if something is moral or not? 2, the origination of them. Where do they come from? And then also passing them on to other people and how one might do that. So,
okay.
Yeah, there's a couple of different things.
Do you want to start at consensus?
Definitely.
And the reason I say this, my notes, folks, as many mere mortalites may be aware, short and far between. So for today's, my notes there's literally just 4 quotes. That's all I've got.
Quotes are good.
Showed you, it's just like that. But I thought it'd be like items around it. But the one that I had written down, which I guess goes to this, from Friedrich Nietzsche. How do you pronounce his last name? Nietzsche or Nietzsche?
Nietzsche. Yeah.
Morality is the herd instinct in the individual.
Herd instinct. Okay.
Morality is the herd instinct in the individual, which I guess goes into more of the consensus that we find in morality that then gets applied to the individual, right? So I think that maybe leads into some of the consensus, because it is, I think, an aspect of herd mentality or the consensus across a group that then defines your morality at the individual level.
For sure. Where I got it from this book. A lot of what was happening in this book was, so basically like just little, if you don't want to listen to the book review, although you should, the book was essentially about Edwardian morals and the etiquette back in the 1900s. So this is just after the Victorian era. So Victorian era was very much like, you know, can't show your ankles, all this sort of thing. It was loosening up a little bit. You know, women were allowed to ride bicycles, shock and horror. And people were being a bit more independent, but it was still very much...
Should they still show the ankles though? Because that would be the real tough gig to like ride a bicycle, but not show your...
Yeah, you tuck your ankles into the pedals first before you start riding. That would be super safe, easy to get off. And what was happening was like the Lucy in this book, the main character, everyone was telling her what to do. They're like, Lucy, you're not allowed to say this to, no, you can't associate with those people. Oh, like you should get married to this man, or you shouldn't do that. Like you can't talk to this guy unchaperoned, all these sorts of things. And they were telling her what to do, how to behave. And what I came away with was just being like, what was their moral justification for this? And this was like her friends and family. And then there was a couple of characters who were like kind of cool and just like, oh yeah, you know, she's one of the new girls. She can kind of like make her own choices and things like this. And I guess it's only because they think they're correct, i.e. they are moral. Like they're advising her stuff. Where this is all assuming like people are trying to help her, which I think they were trying to help her, but even if they weren't, like they were telling her to do things because they believe it's correct. That's the thing that should be done. It's not like you go around telling people like, you should murder me. That's a good idea. It's well, you know, that won't help you, and probably if it's not helping you, it's not that great a moral thing to do in this case. But yeah, are there objective morals, aka this is good, this is bad, that apply to all times and all people? That's a little question for you there, Juan. And it was so funny. A random guy, not random guy, Max at the gym comes up and he was just asking me, he asked me about spirituality, and then he was asking me about like morals, and I was just like, holy shit, Max, I'm talking about this in 2 hours time.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this lines up pretty well.
Yeah. So objective.
Is there any
morals that over space and time, and I'm just going to say to humans, but you could apply this to aliens as well if you want. Okay. Are there any objective ones where you can say, this is good, this is right, and this is wrong?
That's a dicey question. I don't think there could be, in how broadly we're defining that there is a moral consensus that's so universal that everyone would attune to it. And merely, I would say, at first glance, I'd go, a lot of the things which I start thinking, let's not be pedophiles. Let's not kill each other.
That was some of the things he came up with.
That's bounded by justice and law. But that's not really what we're talking about here as like a moral, like a universal moral where everyone thinks that this is good and bad.
Yeah.
Killing, you have professional hitmen. They might not think that it's a good thing, but they're going to exchange something, a transaction, to do it. So I would say that even in them, there's some moral quandary which they've crossed it and gone, okay, well, I'm not going to assign to that.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah. I don't think there's one that could apply at all times and
across all time.
Yeah. If you went there, so my one was, I have really strong ones against violence. If I went back to Spartan times and I was like wagging my finger at them, like, no, you shouldn't do that. Like, violence is bad. Mm-hmm. I think they should laughably, kill me and and also
Chiron was not one of the 300 Spartans that were going up to Thermopylae.
And once again, getting to the, what should you do or not do to kids? You probably shouldn't do sexual things to them. You probably also shouldn't throw them out in the wild at the age of 12 and, we'll let nature sort them out and the strong ones will be Spartans. But that's what they were doing, and they would have said at that time, no, we're moral, and it would be hard for me to argue against a whole city who all kind of agree that. So I can't think of anything where I was like, this is from a human perspective, that is absolute moral. Everyone at every point would agree to it. Even the crazy people, even the wacky ones with really far out beliefs, even the ones who had certain upbringings, whether that be good or bad. I just can't think of anything which is everyone would agree to.
Yeah, no,
because even if it's like an ultimate, like we all aim for the ultimate better world or something like that, there'd be some Satanist who would just be, no, like I'm aiming for like the worst possible world.
Yeah, well, and sometimes I think the way that the testing out some of these ideas gets played is narrowing it all the way down to one. And so if you had one singular person living on an island with no other humans around, let's just say there's a single alien somewhere in the galaxy just chilling out on another planet, would they have some moral inclination that would be so universal that it would fit everyone on Earth? Or vice versa, again, if you're on an island and you never met anybody else, would you have some sort of moral pointing star that matches someone else in the world if you've never met anyone, like never been influenced? Yeah, I think there's too much variation in what would happen to ever have there's of course that one thing that we all know, because I think it's bounded in the human species with law or justice, or just the probability that the herd-like mentality for morality is stronger in one way than the other, and so you're just influenced by that bit. Again, everyone thinks, well, you probably shouldn't eat humans, right? I shouldn't just go across the table and eat chiron because I'm hungry. Yeah. But you go to a particular tribe where they're cannibals, so that moral quandary doesn't exist there. That's, hey, we kind of have to do this. We have to eat people. So it doesn't apply everywhere. Yeah. I'd say no. I'd challenge it. Someone tell me right now. You can think of one, but I don't think there's a universal moral.
A single thing
out there.
No. So let's maybe contain it a little bit. We don't have to try and appease all people at all times. Good. So we're now back in the 21st century, current day and age, and you can still go across to some places in the world, but I think you're able to refine it a little bit more, and I'll talk more about why I think there's a refining process perhaps going on with the origination of them.
Okay.
But I was also thinking about even if there was, how would we reach a consensus where we could go, yes, this is moral, and so let's just contain it to a society, for example. It doesn't have to be all of them. Just let's just say Australia. And I was thinking, and I was going all right, how do we reach consensus? Well, we've tried this with religion before, and you could say, what religion says and that dictates is moral. And then I'll be okay, well, I remember reading The Crucible by Arthur Miller, and killing witches by murdering people was moral then. It was okay, all right, well, maybe religion doesn't have such a great track record, and I don't think it does. You could maybe say the state power, whatever the democracy decides. That's a pretty good consensus mechanism. But we'll go back to the Oscar Wilde days, and he probably did deserve to be put to death for his shitty poetry, his shitty poems. It was okay. I didn't enjoy them that much, but no, he there was hints of his homosexuality, and this went into law, and the laws at the time were very clear. If you're a homosexual, you get thrown in jail. And that's what happened to him, and he ended up getting sick and dying, basically. So it's all right, well, state power, maybe that's not so good. What else have we got? Social media nowadays seems to be pretty capricious and contradictory. The book, and I'm just listing off from books here as well. Sure. So You've Been Publicly Shamed by John Ronson. The girl who made a shitty joke on Twitter and then just got her whole life turned upside down. Was that the moral thing to happen to her? Is that like really deserved for her? And this was the girl who made a joke about I'm going to Africa. I hope I don't get AIDS. Oh no, wait, I can't. I'm white, or something like that. That was basically the joke. And then she got on the plane, and Twitter exploded. Yep. She got fired. Yeah, this was all in the air, so she didn't know she'd got fired and was like an internet sensation. So that was kind of why the story was interesting. Even like I was going to say before, perhaps the only thing that comes close to objective is like the immutable laws of physics, but that's not really something moral you can take out. It's just it is.
It is. Well, and I think it's beyond. Well, it's beyond just a human. At that point.
Yeah. From what I understand, like we can't change those laws. They're there. Now, if someone came along and could kind of change them or something, maybe. But once again, it's like Richard Rhodes' energy. Well, nuclear power, for example, we can do really good things with that, or we can create nuclear bombs and bomb Hiroshima or Nagasaki.
Well, look, I think that what we're getting on with a lot of these points, right, is that I think going back to the universal piece that leads into this, morals are, I'm going to say it, I don't think morals are by their nature facts. I would say...
So it's like not
they can't be.
Not a statement?
Yeah, morals can be a statement, but they're not facts.
Okay.
Because they're not...
All right.
There isn't a point... There isn't a point...
True,
yeah, exactly. There isn't a
immutable,
definitive true. They're not immutable. Because I was went, well, laws of physics, okay, they're facts to the facts that we know today. Yes, they can flex. Kind of like, hey, before Newton, there was no facts gravity. Of science. Before, just everyone was floating. So facts do get upgraded and get refined based on knowledge. But they've all... just because the Newtonian physics was brought about by a particular year doesn't mean that Newtonian physics or the presence of a lot of those laws didn't already permeate through the universe. They already were there. It was more a discovery and upgrading of understanding for humans.
Yep.
But they're facts. They are, to as clear as anybody can say, true. You can go against that, like a flat earther, but yeah, you're kind of going against truth to this extent. But then I would say morals can't be called facts. And so it is just a statement, and it can be a statement, as you said, from a social media perspective, from the government, from religious entities, but it is just that, a statement upheld generally by the herd, and the bigger the herd, well, the more you're going to go along with it because you're going against a statement and you have no leg to stand on because there's no facts. It's kind of almost more devious in that sense that even if you challenge, like again, say you were in a school, you're at school, there's 101 religious kids and you're the 102nd kid to come in and you're kind of like, hey, I don't know if I'm
not sure I'm vibing this.
Yeah, if everyone's like, hey, we all pray at 10 in the morning and that's an imperative thing morally, we give our food to our teachers because that's what we want them to do if that was a thing. And even though it might not fit rationality nor facts that you have to do that, because the overwhelming moral perspective is to do that, or to do that when such a thing happens, you're kind of left with, okay, well, I'm fighting an uphill battle here with a statement because there's no other foundational thing you can grab a hold of. If someone's being driven by moral standards, it is difficult to dissuade them with truth because it's not built from truth to begin with.
Yeah. And
there's correlations to reality, but it isn't correlations to truth as a basis.
And there's some things which are, I don't know if you call it immoral, but driving on the left-hand side of the road here in Australia, is that a moral thing to do? Or is that, or is that the right thing to do? Is this the correct thing to do?
No. No. I think you got to separate that into a separate question, because I think you can make it like an easy claim that's yes, you should walk on, you should drive on the left hand side and not the right hand side. However, but it's what about standing on the on a uphill stairs or something like that? Is it moral that everyone goes on the left hand side so the right hand side can be clear for people to walk through? or is it considered, and I think it can be slightly different, is it immoral to be on the right-hand side, right? Because it's like a different, to say like, oh no, you're not following morals, or is it just called, oh, that's immoral, you shouldn't stand on the right because it's going to block some people and whatnot. And again, I think it comes to mind, it's like, yeah, if everyone in the town's like, you cannot do that, that's against our morals to be standing on the right-hand side, like there's no real reason, really a reason besides that community-driven idea.
Yeah, I think those two things are almost equivalent, because you could just extend it and be like, oh, well, if everyone just drove on the right-hand side, it would be. And I think that actually is a thing where maybe you could have something that's maybe objective is a small-time objective thing. Like if you're on that island and everyone agrees, the 100 people agree, like you don't shit by the coconut tree. That's where we get our food from, and that's the moral thing to do. And you got 100 people, you're all like unanimous. Then I think that is completely moral, and there's no debating it. But then if one person does debate it, then it's kind of like up for question.
Well, and it came, I guess, here's the term of consensus, like consensus across a group. I was going to ask, does it change? Easy, like are morals something easy to change?
Easy? I think they can be changed, and I was going to make the argument for personally. I think that more people that actively try and work on their own individual ones and take it just right down to the individual level, and myself, what do I think is moral or not? I think that's probably just the best way to approach it. There's talking practically now, so because we've just talked about kind of the airy fairy morals, but if you're someone and you're like, I want to be a more moral person, I would say think about those couple of things that you find deeply true, and you would no matter what situation you come up in with your head, you can't think of a situation where you doing the opposite of whatever it is. So for me, it would be violence and lying. They're pretty up there in terms of I'd find it hard to think of kind of a realistic situation where me inflicting violence or me lying to someone is the moral thing to do. In those sorts of situations, I think it's good to like just try and bring it down to yourself and decide for yourself. So I think that kind of answers.
Yeah, okay.
The question.
I guess I think at the individual level, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's pretty not self-explanatory, but reasonable to make the assumption that morals can be changed in a relatively okay sense towards a betterment. But what about from the group? Like, again, this is what I'm going to. Let's just say you've come into the annual killing convention of all hitmen kind of gather up in El Salvador. They got their Bitcoin and they get paid that way. You come in, is there a way that you try to change their moral standpoint on murder?
I think you can, and that'll go into the section in terms of like passing them on or perhaps changing them to other people, changing other people's.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's pretty hard to change people's mind on just stuff in general. So yeah, I wouldn't put good odds of you
being able to influence that.
And all those hitmen, like they'll be like, that's my job, bro. Like the robots are coming, the drones are already eaten into it. Like there's going to be so many unemployed hitmen.
It's a hard one to shift. We might jump into the Boostagram Lounge.
Let's do it.
And talk through some of the support that we've been getting off the back. However, I want to show you this as well, by the way. We've got some people out there who are watching us currently on TV.
On the big screen.
The big screen TV sort of thing, which is kind of cool to see. Now, Boostagrams, and here at the Boostagram Lounge, we like to just talk through the people who have kept on supporting here, the podcast. We operate in a value for value space. And a Boostagram is the ability for you, mere mortal at home, send through a message with some Satoshis attached. Now, yes, Satoshis is probably a word that's getting to be known a lot more, probably by a lot more people. Why? Bitcoin's been going boom, all-time new highs. Now, what does that mean for you?
I kind of like it, hovering right around 100K.
Yes.
When someone sends in 1,000 sats, I'm like, that's $1.
Yep, it's pretty easy to kind of see. Exactly. So, yes, Satoshis is a fraction
either
amount of Bitcoin.
100,000 or 1 million. That's all I'm content with.
Now, Satoshi is a fractional amount of Bitcoin, so you can send that through and all the good apps out there that allow you to do that. Go to meremortals.com/support.
Meremortalspodcast.com.
meremortalspodcast.com/support to go and see a lot of the different options that you can do that as well, and our leaderboards and everything else. But I'm actually going to read out these Boostagrams right now.
Nice.
And we begin with, I'm making sure that I've got the right one, from the 29th.
Yeah, something like
29th.
that.
We've got 2 coming this week. We have one from Macintosh. Just want to make sure. Yes. Macintosh. Love the goals. 2,222 sats and using Fountain.
Thank you, Macintosh.
And then a second one from Macintosh. Interesting. 1,111 sats sent using Fountain.
Yeah, I can't remember which episode he sent that on. I'm guessing just the one after the goals, which was...
Must have been.
I can't remember.
The last conversation was on... Oh, man, I'm forgetting 2.
Here we go. I've got my phone up. Are you preparing adequately following the 7 Ps?
Yes.
It was probably that one.
Preparation. So, yes, thank you very much, Macintosh, for sending that through. I'm glad you enjoed those goals.
Yeah, he actually sent it for the examining preferences one.
Oh, there you go.
So,
good to see BLC.
So, just Boostagram wise, I do see people streaming in as well. I noticed there's been a lot more streaming recently. I'm pretty sure we'll have I just had a chat with Jason from Podcast Guru. I think it's his first extended conversation.
It's cool when you do those.
Yeah, so there's a couple of points there, and I'll probably get that out on Sunday. So
nice.
Some interesting things arising from that.
Okay. And he
he
says with a smirk for those folks who can't actually see that.
I just think it's it's kind of like one of those surefire hits where it's, if you cater to the V for V crowd.
Oh no, here we go.
It's
Karen's jumping on the trend wagon. Morals are going down.
Morals
going down the drain.
I've been on the bandwagon for 3 years now. So
true. Can't say that. Just jumping board at the moment. But yes, no. For those who want to keep on supporting the podcast through that format, please do so
in a monetary format.
PayPal.
You can also do it through the PayPal. There's a link down the bottom. I think we've pretty much just, unless we start getting serious money through there, that'll just go to supporting the developers. Agreed. Pretty much. So if you send something in there, that we'll send that on to places where it's needed for people to create cool things like the Fountain Radio that's came out recently. I know people are still working on the apps. Sam's asked me to look at True Fans and just check that out. So there's cool things coming, man.
Good. And for those at home who sometimes are interested in this sort of things, you might know that we have a shirt that goes out to the supporters when they reach 100,000 sats.
Yes,
supported through to the podcast. And Karen's gotten a sneak peek of the new ones coming down the line.
Yeah.
They're not here yet, dude. They're not here. They're still being made, manufactured.
Wait, so how'd you get that photo?
They sent it through me to confirm. They actually send them. They're a cool bunch. They send you a specific detail of what it looks like, what the print's going to look like, and if it fits what your expectations were and stuff like that. No, that is nice. This is really cool.
Okay.
And they're down in Burleigh, so I'll be doing a road trip.
Burleigh Heads, dang.
I'll be going doing a little road trip to go pick them up and see if they're worth it.
Cool.
But in any case, there might be some new shirts coming up available at a higher level because these are much higher quality than the ones beforehand. So be in the know that they're coming.
Hope you got some extra larges.
Yeah, I know. All right. Now, back into the swing of things with morals, and I wanted to just throw this one out there as we continue this from another quote from Oscar Wilde.
Oh, there you go.
Morality, like art, means drawing a line someplace. And so...
Now, it's funny coming from him because he was notorious for just saying things and doing the opposite of them. So him talking about morality in general is just funny because he was basically a loose cannon. He'd say it's okay to fuck it. He literally wrote the picture of Dorian Gray, which was, I guess the end outcome of that book is you shouldn't do bad things because your picture will get ruined and it's actually ruining your soul. So I guess there's some morals there, but he kind of acted like Dorian Gray in his real life. So
well, I would say that at least he's stating that like art, you got to draw a line someplace. Then the fact that you jump over that line or you flick back and forth, that's different. That's different. But I liked at the very least the saying of morality, you have to draw a line somewhere. Now, like I was saying, sort of previously going into the Boostagram Lounge, if you're going to the Hitman convention that's held in El Salvador, like again, I don't know if it's held there. It's held somewhere, I'm sure.
You know, El Salvador is the safest country in the Western Hemisphere.
Because it was basically, he like come into power and he was just getting rid of like every single...
Apparently there's a lot of people in jail.
Yeah, a lot, apparently. So I would say, look, at that point, if you draw... I've got a table here in front of me, right? If you draw your line in the sand on your moral standings, I've got to draw it somewhere. Here it is. And you come across this group where their line is like way over here in this big group of, hey, killing. Yeah, totally fine. Cool. As long as I get paid enough money. Now, how would you try to, and I think you were talking about that second point of how would you go about influencing them to either yourself, the people around you, big groups, all that sort of thing?
I mean, that sounds like politics to me. And if you go back to our politics episode, I'm not a fan of that. So I'm just thinking, let's give a real example, the death penalty in the US, for example. Some states allow it, most states don't. How would you, and I would very much put myself in the camp of, I don't think that should be a thing. And I think there's a lot of good reasons you can come up with that in terms of just like straight up expenses and things like that. But I would actually put it down to the violence aspect and be like, you're inflicting violence upon someone. I get it. You need to make sure they're contained so that they can't do violence upon other people, which is probably why they're there. Most I think you get on death row for killing people is maybe the only way. I'm not sure there's other ways for getting on death row. But in that case, if I was like, okay, how can I influence Texas or whichever state still has it? How would I go about doing that? I wouldn't. I'm not sure I'd really want to. Yeah, to be honest.
I get what you're saying. That starts swaying into the more what feels like a political realm or a swaying of.
I think probably the best way of trying to do it would be a long, deep conversation of over 3 hours with someone who you're comfortable with and you believe who's genuine. That is probably the only way that I would be willing to. And in that case, I wouldn't be trying to convince. It would just be like, here's what I think. Hear what they think, and then we'll just see if they make some really good arguments. And and they're like, we have to do the death penalty because X, Y, and Z reason. It keeps society in order, or whatever their arguments were. And if they were valid, I'd be like, okay, all right, maybe they'll sway me a little bit.
Yeah. See, because I was thinking back to, again, if I'm holding to my point that morals are not truth, but they're statements, you can't just get away with trying to persuade someone very easily with, hey, look, well, this is a fact, or look, this is what it should be, and it's like, oh, of course, that's what you're not going to change someone's mind like that.
Religious people do this all the time. They'll just throw something out, and you go, okay, how do you get to that?
Yeah,
especially if it's maybe one of the more wacky or hard to kind of like understand ones where it'll be something to do with shellfish, or like when I was in Mexico and they believe drinking Coke and Sprite and Pepsi and soda and burping out the devils, that sort of thing. And it's like, well, it's moral to burp them out because devils are bad. And it's like, well, okay, there's a
stretch here.
There's a lot of things here that I'm
getting stretched thin.
Yeah.
But I was going to say so for me to persuade or change morals, I think like happiness with oneself has to kind of like ensue. So if I was really trying to, like me personally, practically, if I was looking at, hey, how do I pass the right morals on to my daughter?
Yeah, I was going to ask you this.
I don't think that the answer is you tell them what their morals should be. It is instead that they ensuingly, hey?
You do them.
Yeah, it's by the act of doing that morals are actually uptaken and passed on, as opposed to being told that this is a moral.
Yeah. I think that's the best way of doing it. And, there's, funnily enough, I'm sure there's religions which will say this as well, act as you say, that sort of thing.
Act as,
I can't remember, what is it? There's the one which is like, do as I say, not as I do. And that's kind of like, no one follows that person. No one wants to be that person. that person doesn't generally have the best life or the best outcomes. But I was going to ask you. So with Vienna, how you gonna do it? How you gonna act? You're just gonna act the best way you can, or do you think you're like pepper in every now and then when she's like just
morals,
old enough and
don't kill people?
Well, just like just small things. Like if you see her like enjoying stepping on a bug and causing it pain or something, would you be like, telling her a little bit like, hey, that thing can feel and it can feel pain. Do you like feeling pain? Well, pinch her. do you want me to do this all the time? Okay, well, maybe you shouldn't step on bugs.
Yeah.
Like, or would it just be like, should observe you never stepping on a bug in your life? Juan's never killed a bug.
The thing is,
no, he has.
The thing is when you see like, and maybe I don't know, right? How much of morals do you think nature versus nurture? That's a difficult question. Like that's because what you just stated there is, hey, if a child is crushing an ant and like enjoying it,
it's used more like a lizard or something like
or lizard. Yeah. So let's go lizard. If you see, a chicken. Have you heard of some of the kids that kill chickens? They like ramp their necks and wring them out and kill them
for fun.
Yes. Who knows?
Yeah.
Now the thing is, is that picked up naturally? Like that's just, hey, this human's been created and they just have the nature to do that.
I think we all have some violent impulses in us at times. Yeah.
If that's the case, that's a hard one because you're probably gonna have to demonstrate the moral aspects of being gentle and kind and a few other things, whichever ones you want to attribute to that. I think by the by though, most of the morals that I can think of are just going to be ones that ensue by action, not by telling someone, hey, you should be moral in this particular way. I don't think it would really be absorbed either, a moral.
Yeah, I met this Aussie guy, when was this? 2017. And he was really successful, had an amazing place, really, really cool. And it was kind of like I was visiting there with a friend of mine, and he had this friend of mine was Chilean, and he'd lived in Chile before, and he had a farm there. And I remember him trying to tell the local farmers, like, don't kill the cows this way because, you're bleeding them out. Not only is it creating like tougher meat or something like that, but you're just causing immense harm and suffering to this cow. But they had thousands of years of kind of like ancient folk wisdom of like, this is how you kill the cows.
Sure.
And so he was trying to argue him out of it, and I don't think he ever managed to. It was just too much heritage that he was trying to fight in that case. And so, yeah, in terms of like all the things that would say morals, I don't know. I'd say like, probably 50-50. Half of them originate from things within us where it's, most people don't like harm. Most people don't like seeing other people in pain and suffering. So there'd probably be a bit of that. And then there'd also probably be, but we also really like seeing justice done. But we also have a law system so that it's not moral to kill the guy who killed your daughter. No, the moral thing to do is for him to get arrested and then go through the court system. And
I kind of align that. I think most mere mortals really left to their own device as an individual and not by herd mentality that comes from aspects of morals. I think our nature is just to fall in line with like general prey, predator, animal structures.
Yeah.
As in, again, if you had an individual who lived in an island with no other humans around, would you call them, it's morally bad that he's killing fish and strangling them and then eating them?
Well, I would, it'd be interesting to know, would that person, would they kill fish just for fun? Like, would they kill them to torture them just to see them in pain? And just because they're bored, for example? And I'd say probably not. Probably like a lot of that wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So
Although I think I have seen videos where animals do this, like lions just pulling an animal and killing it and just kind of walking away. So maybe that does happen. I don't know.
Yeah, and sometimes but there's also other reasons for that. They're teaching their young how to
attack, how to hunt.
Kill. So it's kind of like a teaching thing, not necessarily just.
That's a good point.
But there's always aberrations.
A point just quickly just on the hunting bit. So I wanted to ask you this: is there superior morals than other morals?
Superior ones. There's probably levels to it. So there's the 12 commandments, for example. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not worship false gods or whatever. So if you're just taking it from a religious, and in particular Abrahamic religion, I'm sure there was morals within the Bible or many of the different texts and books that are beneath those. So that you've probably got your top tier 12, and then
the many below.
Then there'd be variations.
But I guess what I was thinking about was, and so the reason you said hunting when we're talking about lions, imagine the conversation between those people who like to hunt, right? Who will go out there with bow and arrow or a gun, and they'll shoot up an animal. Maybe they'll just do the shooting. That's it, just because they enjoy the hunt, the sport of it. They go home.
But there's people that do that. I mean,
they
do that with rifles.
For sure, there's people who do that.
African
now
game.
If
game
someone
reserves.
who goes out there and shoots purely with a bow and arrow, and they go hunt them, and then they bring back their meat, and then they eat it, and then they feed themselves and whatnot. Okay, there's that.
Okay, so like, is the same action if two people took the same action?
Same similar outcome.
Yeah.
Performed in different ways.
Yeah.
Is it different morals there?
I think intentions matter. So I would say so. Yeah.
And then the third one, if there's a standby person, you and me, right? Although not you and me, but let's just say another individual, me and Mortal out there, who goes, man, that's morally so bad, but they're still eating burgers and steaks and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay.
Now, is their moral quandary or point of view lesser because they are like less informed or less wise to the realities of what took place?
I think you can have both. I think you can be a judge and that can be okay to judge people.
Okay.
I think it's fine to judge people.
Yeah.
And I think also, if you examine it, we're all hypocrites. We're all subpar. So it's like, so you can be like, scum of the earth, judging these people, but just as long as you recognize you're scum of the earth as well, and you're not really that far above them.
Yeah, so. I think that's where it maybe doesn't happen. That also viewing of yourself and being like, oh yeah, I'm also in that point. Like, yes, if you're going to be, because I was going to say, is there levels to morals? No, I would have said no. Like when you were talking about the 12 commandments, and I guess those were morals to follow, and then you have the one subset, I'd kind of go, well, I just view them as, if you really want to talk about morals, everything's the same. Like everything's mapped at the same level, not one above the other, because just as much as it is to one person this top commandment, maybe it isn't to somebody else. Yeah. So you can't really rank morals.
I'd view it more as kind of Aesop's fables. If you read them, so the classic ones are like the scorpion and the frog, where the scorpion gets on the frog's head and they cross the river and kills it, and they'd both drown, and then the frog's like, why, oh why? And he's like, because that's my nature. And what's the moral to take from that? Well, it's like, well, don't be foolish to the nature of other people, especially if you know that nature.
Sure.
Or then the moral could be like, if you know your own nature, don't put yourself in situations where you're going to do.
You're crossing a river with a scorpion.
Well, you're crossing a river on top of a frog, and you're going to kill the frog. Yeah, and thereby killing yourself. I think it's probably better to view them as that, where that book, like if you read Aesop's Fables, it's not terribly long, and there's all these sorts of different ones. The foxes jumping after peaches and all sorts of crazy wacky stuff. They're all just really individual, and if you laid them out, I guess in rank order, perhaps whether from like 1 to 1 to 100 off of where they appear in the book, and then you reorder them to the ones that you think are the most important. I think it's probably best just to look at them and be like, each of these is an individual instance. And like I said, you can kind of read those things, and there's Aesop fables, the morals, the lessons, the stories, a message conveyed, and these still are up for debate
Sure.
by us. What, like 2,000 years later or whatever, since Aesop created.
How long though? Damn.
I'm pretty sure it was in the Greek era, right? Greek or Roman era. Aesop, I think so. Maybe
Aesop
1,000 a bit.
Okay.
So certainly not recent. All right. Here's a couple of last ones to end up with. So just religion for myself. So I was chatting with Max today, and he's kind of religious. And I was just thinking, like, a lot of religious people say, this is where I get my morals from. It's from like the immutable word of God that's written in the book. I'd be fine with that if it was just consistency, like across all religions. But I've seen so, I don't know. I've just seen, maybe I'm jaded. I've seen too many people who are, following a religion. That's their religion. They're they're within it, and they're just not that much more moral than anyone else. Take like even Sam Bankman-Fried, if you want to take him for example, the effective altruist. He's like, he's just a piece of shit.
But even in that, I think you can't. Well, maybe you can't. But can you hold it in the same hand of being altruistic, but also taking money from left, right, and center heaps of people and give it to yourself?
And think that you're morally good.
Think that you're morally good.
I think
that you're morally keeping it steady.
Well, he might think that still. He might think like, if I'd just gotten a bit. I'm pretty sure he does. He said this. If I'd just had more time, like I would have fixed it all up. And my ultimate goal was to give all my money away. And so the more money I got, the more I could give away. How impeccable logic. But what's happened is like he goes to jail for a fucking long time because that's what the morals of everyone else is like. Nah, we don't think that holds up. So in that case, I'm sure he can think it, but if you take it in the wider context, like he's not a good guy. But there are exceptional people, like all the saints, and I'm sure Buddha and Jesus and Muhammad and all those people. Like I'm sure they were pretty exceptional people. It's just like within the groups, within each religion, I'm just like, I can't personally ever see myself deriving my morals from
those
the
individuals.
the holy book, the holy Bible.
And the more you say it as well, see, I don't. I'm gonna state it. I don't think I can come away saying, oh yeah, that's a good moral, that's a bad moral. I don't think you can say that. I don't think you can attribute good or bad because it is such a perspective thing. There is a.
You mean just generally, or?
I think just generally.
Okay.
Like it would be hard for someone to really, I think, debate well that there is a good moral and there's a bad moral.
Okay.
Because it's a comparison to what?
You mean like a good action or a bad action?
No, not an action, but like you said, these individuals they will hold as like, they're the morals that we should follow. And that's, I agree. Like, yes, you can have people who follow really high standard or have, top morals that you want to replicate. But that doesn't mean that they're good or bad. It definitely depends on the observer who's actually choosing to go follow that. Because just as I said, if you're a hitman and you want to follow a particular path because whatever, you're going to observe it in a different way. And you might not call that a good moral. You might think it's a bad moral to not maximize for money or something like that, right? So there's differences there. So I think my one harsh statement I'm making is I don't think there's good morals and bad morals. There is just morals, and the communities who largely uphold particular ones might be influenced by them to be determined as being a good moral or a bad moral. But then I would observe that there is good actions and bad actions.
Okay.
Because actions then have practical implications on the world. And those I would concern myself and say, yes, there is good and bad in that space.
Gotcha. One of my favorite memes over the past week has been this one here. If anyone ever asks you, what would Jesus do? Remind them that flipping over tables and chasing people with a whip is within the realm of possibilities.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There we go.
You can go and whip people, man. You can whip people.
So I found a really interesting video last night. So just finishing up on the origination and perhaps passing them on. There's this YouTube channel called Veritasium. 15 million followers, and I can see why. They make really, really good videos, like high quality.
A little bit lower than the Immortals, but getting up there. Yeah, of course.
And he had this one which was related to game theory, and I remember getting into reading about game theory, like 15 years ago. I was probably like late teens when I was first being like, oh, a prisoner's dilemma. Oh, this is interesting. It's kind of like when you start following the trolley problem, and you're like, oh, okay, trolley problem. Oh, 1 or 5 people. Okay, well, obviously I'd kill the one person. Then it's like, okay, what if you push them off a balcony or onto the train track, all that sort of thing. Game theory is much the same with the prisoner's dilemma, which is, if you've got 2 prisoners and one needs to squeal on the other, or they can cooperate together and they'll get off, or if they both don't cooperate, rationally, logically, the best outcome is to not cooperate and to kind of backstab. But if you play this over a long period, that's the worst thing that can happen. And so cooperation over the long term is actually better. And then they had some kind of principles that came out from this, and you can kind of play these simulation games between different algorithms, and there's a whole story to it. I recommend checking out the vid. It's really cool. And my base argument is kind of like for cultural evolution, is that it's impossible to reach full consensus, as in everyone in a society will agree on a thing. But I think you can create kind of like an equilibrium where the good ones rise to the top. And so I was chatting with Max today as well. I was like, those Spartans, like they'd say violence, no, it's good. But then if we had to they got to live my life for 10 years, I got to live their life for 10 years, and then we meet back up and we're like, okay, who would you rather have? Which era would you rather live in? I get the feeling they're probably going to say right now is better. And then I could point to some certain things and be like, we don't do violence, for example. So your kid's not going to unexpectedly die. Your uncle is not going to get killed in a retaliatory, vendetta or whatever. So I think you can actually make the argument that over time, that evolution will kind of force us into the best morals. And is that the best outcome? I don't necessarily know, but it'll kind of be it'll refine us down or refine us upwards, perhaps over time. And that's getting towards the evolution of seeing cooperation within animals and things like this. And so, for example, the 4 morals that came out of the prisoner dilemma, the game theory, was you need to be nice, aka cooperative, and that this would be one of the best strategies. So tit for tat was basically always be nice at the start, and then only if someone is backstabs you do you retaliate. So that retaliatory is one of the other ones. So that's doing that. Being forgiving though, so every now and then, even if someone does something bad to you, turn the other cheek, blind eye, whatever, all that sort of thing. And then just being clear and consistent with your behavior over time, so not behaving erratically. And I was thinking, I'm like, you know what, those are some pretty good things to just apply to life in general. I think they're somewhat decent, and that's just from kind of like a silly little computer game with not much variables,
but applies.
And so I was going oh yeah, you know what, you could, I think the origination of perhaps some morals that we have nowadays, you could put down to cultural evolution or just evolution itself in the way that we behave in certain respects, where it's not moral to defecate or, put your excrement on the walls of the place where you work, and some of that is related to.
But why? So I would challenge you. It's not evolution that's doing that.
Okay,
what is a reason that you wouldn't defecate on the walls of a friend's house or like a workplace?
Probably because like if you had done that over time, like enough people have done that and experimented with that and realized like, oh, there's pretty bad outcomes that come from this, and they just kind of die off. Like you can't really be talking about morals if you're dead, and so. If if your lineage doesn't exist anymore,
that's true. That's a good point. I was thinking in my mind. I think I would disagree that morals evolve purely by the generations that come about it. So I think it
might not be purely by, but I think there's a pretty strong case to be made that some of them have come from people behaving in certain ways and seeing outcomes, adjusting their behavior.
But I think this is the difference, that morals are not the action. They are by virtue just a statement. Because you went back to, you were saying about the Spartans, right? If all of the Spartans, could you absolutely definitively say that all of them had the same moral standard about killing?
No, of course, there'd be
but I think there'd be one or two that wouldn't. Maybe they'd be like, actually, I don't really want to kill this person or whatever. But their actions were different. Maybe they would do it. They go, and my mindset goes, well, the reason that you would do that is more aligned to fitting in with the cohort or in the group or doing what the expectation is. So I think that your statement of morality can be different, but you'll be much more influenced to do the thing by the behaviors and maybe the other side, the stick of, I don't want to not fit in or be seen as the outcast or something to that. I think
this was the other thing that came from game theory was, say you've got like a big population and everyone is negative apart from one guy. One guy wants to be like the good guy, cooperate and things like that. That one guy will die out because they'll just get taken advantage of by everyone. Now everyone's taking advantage of themselves as well, so it's kind of like a shitty... It's not a great place to maximize for points, which is the aim of the game. But if you had, say, like 10 little people within this group and they were just closely situated, what you'd see is like they would they'd gather resources, they would do better. And then if you're just allowing like, life and death to occur within the game, they would spread out. And so they would spread out and basically take over almost the whole game. Right. So there would only be, and then you find this balance where, a certain number of like freeloaders, if you want to call them that, who take advantage of the system or who are always like negative and just trying to steal from everyone, they'll reach this balance where it'll be mostly good, i.e. maximal optimizing, with a couple of little negative ones. So in this case, I'd be like, if there'd just been 5 Spartans and they'd kind of gotten together and they were just like, what, morally, I think it's wrong to throw children out into the wild, and morally, I think it's wrong to, just be such a bloodthirsty, violent nation, always going to war, all that sort of thing. And they just kind of, just made subtle decisions. It's because it doesn't have to be like super, how would you call it? Like confrontational.
Sure.
I think you could make the argument that morally, like they could change, and this is also affecting people. Like just those small actions are magnified over a lifetime, and then magnify that over 10 generations. I think that can change things as well.
Okay.
So even if you're kind of like forced to do some things at some points that you don't really want to.
Yeah. Okay. No, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah. All right. My last one. So just personally, my strongest morals, they're ones that come from personal experience, to be honest. They're ones like I don't think I've derived these from books. I don't think I've derived it from my dad. Certainly not my dad for these ones. These are the ones where they're bad. Like they're bad in the sense that they're like more like thou shalt not. Right. So for me, thou shalt not inflict violence. Thou shalt not, i.e., or like undesired harm, aka violence, or lying, aka coercion. And that's just because when I have done those things in my life, they've been when I've felt the worst, when I've acted the worst, when I've hurt other people the worst. And I just see like negative bad outcomes, really painful ones for everyone involved. And I go, okay, well, those are the things that I think it's like imperative that I don't do these things. And it's not as imperative to try and, I could maybe think of some moral things related to like, you know, consistency or hard work or something like that.
Yeah.
But they're not as strong as those ones. And so that's just where I kind of personally get mine from. But yeah, I'm not sure if you had to ask the general population, like where do you get your morals from? I wonder what people
I think
would
the
say.
general answer would be
Like
mom
religion.
and dad.
Yeah, you reckon?
I reckon it'd be family.
Yeah, I think religion would be pretty high. And I also think just culture. People would probably just say, just because, like that's what everyone else would do. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, because I was thinking in my mind as you were stating them as well. You know, do I have any strong morals? And I think the answer really is probably no. But maybe it's because I'm not.
Juan's an Oscar Wilde. He thinks everything's permitted.
Maybe it's because I'm not qualifying the difference in my own mind of what a moral is versus a choice. Or because when you said, you know, hard work, don't know if I'd like associate that with like a moral, or like to have a moral standard on hard work. I'd go like, well, that's more of a, I don't know, like, kind of like an attribute, or not even attribute, like a skill set of, well, being disciplined is a skill set that you can build up, as opposed to moral being like a statement that you make about what you believe in.
Yeah. How about like give away more than you get, or you know, that sort of thing. Like give more than you receive. Is that a moral thing?
Well, I think it is a moral.
Because some people,
True.
I know a lot of people would say that.
Yeah, it's a hard one. I think personally,
Jordan Peterson, man, if he was here, he'd be like, Juan thinks everything's permitted. Raskjuanikov Juan is his name.
But I mean, I think I hold morals in a very low standard. Like I hold it at a very low, like a low value. I hold morals in a very low value, and I think it's because they're not actions.
Yeah.
And so, what is it? Wisdom is to know the information, but integrity is to act on it.
Okay.
So, you can have all the information at your power, and I guess integrity maybe follows through with morality, but it doesn't have to, because you can morally think something and do something else. I think I kind of default to, well, kind of just matters what you do, and that doesn't have to align to morals at all. So you can choose to do this, you can choose not to. I could, maybe, I don't know, this is a reality, but maybe my morality is like, hey, you should always wake up after 6 a.m. And it just never happens. I just always wake up earlier. But
You're a bad man.
I'm a bad man. But I just go, actions speak way louder than morality at this point.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to kind of sum it up. I had like, you know, until we really solve what's going on with consciousness, I don't think we'll ever get anything close to human consensus on what is moral and what is ultimately good and ultimately bad.
Here's a straightforward, pointed question, and I'll leave this for mere mortals at home. Feel free to answer it here. If you do so afterwards, send us a message. Do you need morals or a morality meter or a moral standard to have a human?
To have a human?
Yep. Can you be a human devoid of morals? I'm not saying good or bad morals. I'm saying devoid of morals. Devoid of the statement of having a moral opinion.
Yeah, I'd say I could imagine a human like that. Yeah. That'd probably be pretty weird, but I think...
I was trying to imagine that. I was kind of thinking like animalistic in nature, but...
And another question, you know, AI morals, are they up for debate? You know, is it possible to have morals within an artificial intelligence or something like that?
Well, I think the more interesting question, because what you stated there is just, well, it would have the human morals attached to it that create it. What about the morals that are automatically created by the AI, aka you go, hey, or create your own set of morals. Go forth or without any input of humans.
Or they're unexplainable as to their origins. But perhaps is maybe a better way. Like evolution.
Well, this is the thing. I would be, again, this is another question that I'm not sure what the answer is, and someone can pose out there. If you left AI to its own devices and you went, hey, create a whole set of morals for existing in this digital world without any of human context, but don't include any human context into it, will it come up with any morals? Devoid of the human. If you just started humanity today, like humans just begin today. We went tadpole yesterday, human being comes out of the water today.
I'm not sure it works like that.
It doesn't. Or would there be morals, or is morals maybe this lends a statement to you saying that I guess evolution does develop morals?
Yeah. I think there's got to be some portion, at least a portion of it related to that. What books did I reference most today, Juan? You'll notice it was actually just random kind of, classics. It was even a couple of modern ones. I did not reference Reasons and Persons by Derek Parfit. I did not reference Nietzsche. I did not reference Heidegger. I did not reference Kierkegaard. So I think, especially for the philosophy aspect of it, or like the ethics, I don't think those guys help out at all. Or really any of the books that I've read, which are related explicitly to this is getting into like the hardest, the deepest essence of what is moral or ethical for humans. I've not found that. And so getting to your point again of, the thumbnail, practical morals, are they possible perhaps? Is there any way of thinking about morality in a kind of practical sense that you can take away? I don't think there's much, to be honest. This episode is probably one of the ones where we've had like the least effective philosophy applied to it, because it was kind of just like, I don't know, it's a little bit airy-fairy, I don't know.
I would even go so far as to say this like deep philosophical thinking on morals and morality is, just to begin, not super valuable to the effectiveness and the practicality of human society as a whole, or flourishment. Not really, because I think there are so many more underlying key drivers of changes and actions and things that actually play a part of you and me and everyone listening to this, that for the large part, you can talk about morals, but they don't really play that much of a part in your day-to-day actions. In the minutia, not really.
Yeah. If I was, someone came up to me and was like, Karen, I want to read some books and I want to learn how to become a better person, a more moral person, I would probably suggest like, go read something like the Gulag Archipelago, see how those people behaved in there. You can see the good and the bad of humans in that book. Compare that to reading the Tripitaka, and instead you'll learn about monks putting caterpillars on their penises and getting erections, or, the various different ways that you should not have sex with a mutilated corpse. And, which of those two books would you think is perhaps from the outside looking in, you're like, the book of like Buddhist philosophy of the monks, that's where you'll find the more moral stuff.
No, it isn't. No. And again, same thing can be said. I was thinking, if for me, if I was saying, hey, good morals are, don't kill and don't make people suffer, right? I'll go, hey, go read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Go read that. But it is, you learn, the moral aspects of it are ensued by learning about other aspects, and whether it's reading or being told or going through yourself. So actions or active doing something else, that's how you're going to pick up those morals. But the sheer, discussing in detail the definitions of morality and its practical, like theorizing about it, you ain't going to go very far.
Pretty much. And, part of that's just through crappy communication is what hinders us a lot. If you're trying to tell someone to do this thing or not to do that thing, and this is good, this statement is good, this is bad. So much of those are just, language barriers, trying to communicate that to a Spaniard or to someone from Lithuania, you're going to struggle.
How would you communicate if maybe there are cannibals out there who speak English? How would you begin trying to tell them that eating humans is bad?
Interpretive dance.
Interpretive dance, you know? Yeah. Karen would dance like not human, so it wouldn't get eaten. You know, what would you say at the forefront to kind of start changing their mind to your morals? It's kind of it's very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if the logical part of me wants to make arguments of like, oh, okay, but well, you know, there's all these brain diseases that come out especially if you eat the brains of other humans. I forget the name for it. Cows have it as well. It's what mad cow disease.
But that's not a moral.
I know, but
that's a fact.
Yeah, and these are like facts to try and back up why this thing is moral or is not.
Yeah. So, and I think that's why I get to practical morality. You kind of move away from morals. Like to get more practical, you move away from morals into actual facts, and then at that point, you're moving away from morals. 'Cause at least from my point, they're just statements.
Yeah, my final sum up is the should word. People using should.
Should.
It's usually related to something moral. You should do this. You shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of this should.
I'm not a fan of should. Yeah.
Right.
Either you should wake up in the morning. Just wake up.
Yeah,
wake
exactly.
Up. Just what you do.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Mere Mortalites. Well, that has been. I don't even know how long we've been going, but it's going a little while. Hour and 20. I appreciate the people who've been tuning on online. For any of those who are online, do we have any comments, any queries, any questions that we can answer?
No.
Good. So once again, we are live 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Karen is going to be shortly taking flight, heading off around the world.
We've got 4 more until I head off.
That's about right. Yep. We've got 4 more conversations here in Australia, and then we'll have to discuss what timing and that continues as Karen travels.
Oh man, it's possible. It's 6 a.m. At 6 a.m. Brazilian time is when it normally is.
Late. So the definition is late, 6 a.m.
I don't know how I'm going to go about waking up at 5 because I need to wake up at 5:30 basically to be ready.
Right.
Maybe I think maybe like
what you can do is you get up at 4:15. Have enough time to wake up, have some breakfast, have a shower, do a gym session.
Man, you're breaking all my morals here, doing all of those things.
You'll be in Brazil. Yeah, I reckon you become nocturnal.
Maybe we can do 7:30 our time.
So look, timing might change, folks, for the actual musings, but it'll still be around that similar time. So
yeah,
be on the lookout for that as well.
I think I can morally justify getting up at 6. I'm not sure about 5:30.
5:30. Yeah. So it's the boundary. We need a few more generations of evolution for Karen to get there. So
a lot more.
a lot more. Thank you for tuning in as well. For those who do want to support us as well, as we called out, we are Value for Value enabled. Go and support us through one of those podcast players out there.
Yeah, and just the small things, you know. What is a moral imperative? Share the Mere Mortals. If you have a topic that you think is interesting, sharing it with a friend. You can clip this stuff elsewhere as well. And you know, we post on social media all the time. So if you want to like and share those, even just those little things, that's always
go do so. All support is
always
good.
nice.
I think even like little comments. I know Karen was talking about last time. He got a really good comment on one of his book reviews.
Yeah. Reaching out personally is really nice.
So all of that
plenty
helps.
of social links down below. Just reach out. Don't feel fear. Don't feel fear.
You're morally obliged if you're thinking it.
Be morally courageous.
You must do it. For now, we're going to leave it there. Mere Mortalites, thank you very much. Take care wherever you are in the world.
Ciao.
One out.
Bye.
Good.